Okay, good morning, everybody. Sorry, had to think about that. Then, just let me start apologizing, changing the time. As some of you know, I'm a Cowboys fan, Dallas Cowboys fan, NFL, and they play at ridiculous hours. So I didn't get to bed till 5:15 this morning. Compound by that, they went and lost, which doesn't help. So yeah, I was just knackered, to be honest. So I just went back to bed for a couple of hours, and then by the time I got up about 20 past 10, I realized I wasn't going to have enough time for 11 o'clock. So I'm here. Thank you for your patience with that. And if anyone happened to miss it because they had to get back to work or whatever, the recording's always on YouTube. So I'll post that in Discord afterwards. How is everyone doing? I've just gone straight onto the charts. We'll try and keep this as succinct as we can, but there's unfortunately plenty to talk about when we actually look at the charts. Bitcoin here, 3-day time frame. We'll just try and keep this bit simple. I'll zoom in so that you can see it all. We've had that bounce that we talked about on Tuesday, and let's not underestimate a bounce from 80,000 to 93, 94,000. It's a great move up, and certainly showing some signs of strength. 3-day time frames here, remember. So a couple of charts are a bit conflicting. Sorry, a couple of candles are a bit conflicting. The candle previous, this one here, with a beautiful low test back into the 86 regions, and then that huge move up. Fantastic move here. But actually, when you just kind of zoom in on what is, most of these candles here are all rejecting in and around that $93,000 level, with the current candle at the moment kind of looking a polar opposite to what we had only a few days ago, with a fairly strong rejection, 12 hours to go. So who knows where this may go. But for me, that 93,000 is just such a major level for us. And I'm not writing anything off here. I'm not saying it's over because we haven't broken through it. We've had a move, as I say, a $14,000 move. It's going to take some time to recover that there. But I'm kind of working within this zone here. We get through 93,000. I think that journey to 100K is maybe not a foregone conclusion, but I think that is a high probability to move up there. There's just not really anything in our way to stop us, just given the speed that we ultimately came back down. But if we can't quite break that 93, I have to look at 86. 86 for me is actually a very critical level. We're going to look at this one across multiple timeframes, but ultimately, 86 is either going to be a retest for us to bounce back through, but if we lose it, I think we're going to be hard pushed to not say that actually what we're seeing is just a bit of a continuation down there, and then it's a case of where do we go? Do we have to start talking about the low 70s back where we were in April? So for me, 86,000, really big level for us to watch. We have had some good support from it, so that's absolutely fine. But to counter that, at the moment, 93 is getting quite difficult to knock through. But big picture, if you have to go in 5 minutes, they're the two levels that I have to look at. Bitcoin dominance is quite confusing, actually. We had this sort of breakdown, started to form a bit of a bottom, bit of a recovery over the past couple of days. But actually, what we saw yesterday was alts doing okay. I mean, relatively speaking, maybe not having the severity of drops that Bitcoin was experiencing. And that's kind of created a little bit of a drop back down. So we're just in and around that 60K level at the moment. I don't think Bitcoin dominance is really telling us the state of the market. And if you had to have a guess at just looking at it from that, Bitcoin's probably slightly ahead, but I can't really see a way where we go, oh yeah, because I'm looking at this chart and how this is forming at the moment, old season's around the corner, or actually the market's over. There's nothing that's really given me that, just because we've been ranging sideways for, really, since September. Total 2, so let's just talk about altcoins. Lost that level, and again, bit like what we had with Bitcoin there, just knocking on the door of that 1.25 trillion. And this one really is a difficult level for us to get through. You add on to that. Okay, actually, when I lined it up before, okay, that's actually looking a little bit better, but I wouldn't start celebrating just yet. You could make the argument there. Sorry, I thought this wick was actually the other side of it. But we have at least dipped our toe through this resistance, downtrend. But actually, we've kind of been beaten all the way down. I was hoping it's the other side, and we could say that we were bouncing off it. So we've probably got another 3 or 4 days until we can actually kind of see where this is going. But we are at a precipice here, I suppose, for altcoins. One, we've got this downtrend. Are we going to continue that? To continue that, we are going to have to also reject off this level, and down we go. But to break out of this downtrend, obviously we're going to get that uplift through that 125 level. and continuing up. And then let's just assume that we do. The next level, without even looking at vectors, is going to be, I'd put it here. I mean, it's hard because what I'm looking at is that kind of shoulder there and the base of that there. But on the 3-day time frame, there's nothing really clean that I can attach it to, but somewhere within that region, 1.37 level is what I'd be looking at. And then we get on to bit tensor, and obviously we're going to spend a bit of time talking about that. I don't like the look of it. I didn't like the look of it yesterday. That's what I got out of it. I appreciate there's a lot of lines on here. Let's just get rid of some that aren't relevant to us right now and potentially a little distracting. This yellow channel kind of dictated where we've gone for the last sort of 6 months, but we are below it. We're staying below it. We had that move back up, similar to Bitcoin's 80K to 94,000, that 250 up to about 315 yesterday. But 315 being the Gandalf line, 315 also kind of tying in with that 800 EMA on the daily time frame. We're going to look at all these later. Rejected from it, and then in a downtrend, incredible high test. It worries me. I got out yesterday. I just need to see some confirmation that that's going to do a better turnaround, not to mention the fact that we are below this 297. So immediate targets for me, and I went to bed last night, early hours this morning, and I thought, well, if it nukes overnight, I've actually got a buy order in there, 245. I'm going to get rid of these now. It's just whilst my eyes were closed, and then I had a further one down here, which you might not be able to see because my head's in the way. I know you can, which would be about that 230 level, and then God forbid, down, maybe even down as low as the sort of the 180. Let's not worry too much about those levels there, but that's kind of where I'm seeing. And I don't know many people who could honestly look at that and right now just go, I'm fairly comfortable that this thing's going back up to 500 in a matter of weeks. It just doesn't feel that. I think there's a lot of things in the way with it. So yeah, the side step for me seemed like the best course of action on that. And I'm not a D tower, so I don't know how that impacts alphas. I just trust everybody in the subnets on those, and I'll comment on something a little bit later on, just with what's going on in Discord at the moment. Right, okay. So, big picture there. Down on the 12-hour time frame, and I'll try and, sorry if I jump from positive to negative here, but you know my back is up. We're below the 50 EMA on the weekly time frame. We have had a continuous downfall. We haven't broken that trend. So I'm kind of just looking at both sides till I see some sort of confirmation. Haven't sold any of my Bitcoin, just for context. I'm basically Bitcoin, USDT. So haven't thrown in the white flag as of yet. And actually, on the 12-hour time frame, we got these liquidity blocks, and classic kind of gone into that. We didn't quite clear it all, but we got a fair chunk of it. And then the market makers just thought, right, I've had enough of that. Let's just start to look into rebuild. And if we then go on to a cleaner version of this chart, just so you can kind of see it a little bit better. Actually, no, I'm going to stick with this one. Sorry, I'm going to stick with this one because it's got the fibs on it. Let's just get rid of these. Just looking at those 12 hours, we've got the downtrend, we've got a bounce, and what do we actually do? Do you know what? I mean, the simplest of terms, we are forming now higher highs and higher lows. We're trying to break through that trend. We've got, the base is formed here. I'll call that 0, 1, 2, 3. So we want one more down, one more, and then the next one up, and then for me, trend is broken. So we're doing the right steps. This is on the 12-hour time frame, so it's not exactly a tiny time frame here. And actually, this doesn't look too bad. You can take a couple of positives from this W4. Oops, no, you can't. W formation, right-hand side higher than the left-hand side, broken through trends, moving up, made a new higher high, just happens to be coming back down. And there's plenty of areas for it to come back down into. The most logical now being around about 88,000 with this fib level here, still maintaining that higher high posturing, and then just building off that, and off we go. If we have a look on this one now, which is a bit cleaner, and I probably should have prepped this beforehand. Sorry. Just going to put 50 EMA on. Won't bother with the rest. Just have 50 for now. Okay. So we've had this sort of move down. I was actually trying to do it from sort of a count, 1, 2, potentially 3. W, and are we rising out? That's the question I was sort of kind of looking at there. That is over 2 and a bit months, so a fairly decent time frame for it to be had. We can kind of see breaks through the 50 EMA. Remember, it's just 50, back, re-attacks it, breaks back through, back, re-attacks it, in the consolidation period, comes back down, W formation, and we're trying to break through this right-hand side of this W formation. What do we always say we need? We need to break through the 50 EMA with volume. Nice green or blue vector candle. We'll have a look at those later, but we haven't at the moment. But we can still afford to sort of come back down here and make that move up. And let's not forget, we've got some pretty interesting events next week. FOMC, everyone is expecting a rate cut. Even if Japan then goes and undoes it 10 days later, there could be some optimism within the markets for them, to find some momentum to break back through. But I do like the look of that. If I hadn't have been so blindsided yesterday with just a bit tenser side set, maybe I could have said, actually, there's a little move to be had there, because this 50 EMA has been pretty strong, and we're looking to reject from it. I just it's a bit slow. A $4,000 move, is it really worth me moving everything across the risk reward? Maybe not. So I'll happily stick with where that is. But yeah, that 50 EMA unfortunately is holding us back ever so slightly. But as long as we can maintain that, and actually on Tuesday we talked about. Now I look at it, we did talk about, this being the waistline of that double bottom. We've actually just come and re-attacked that. We haven't even lost that yet. So there's, again, another positive sign, break through that, come back down, retest the waistline, build up that momentum, make that move go up. We need to do it in the next couple of candles, 12-hour candles here, remember. Weekend potentially on our side, we have free reign to do whatever it is that we want to do. It can come back and bite us, especially if we're going down. There's no brakes being applied by any of the traditional markets. But certainly some things to have a look at there. In terms of, we're on a weekly time frame now, log chart, 20 and 50 EMAs. Let's just get rid of the 20. I don't think it's relevant for us at the moment. 50 EMA, you kind of know where we stand on that one. But if we just remove this and we start to have a look at base supports, okay? I don't think there's a connection. I'm just looking, I don't think I can make a case unless I did bodies and not wicks. Let's have a look. Not do the wicks. No, there's nothing there. That's fine. Okay. So let's have a look at some others. So I'm thinking we just do the bull market case. So there's this here. I swear you used to be able to get it. Take that wick there. Tighten it up a little bit. No, I'm kind of eating into that a bit too much there. Maybe let's just make these colors better for everybody, shall we? Let's do that. Let's put it on the 2. Maybe there's an argument that was, major support, and you can kind of see we lost that 108. Nobody called it. Myself neither. What happens? You get carried away with thinking, it'll come back, but pretty decent base of breach there. We've come back down, but I'm now just wondering, where else can we potentially draw these? See if we can get any sort of line. I mean, you could just be a bit more accurate on these, and sorry, I should zoom in. I appreciate people watching on mobiles as well. You're probably not seeing anything. Bit more tighter in terms of that. We have this gap here, but you can kind of see the intentions of where these moves were. Okay, they may not have made it all the way back, but there was definitely a magnet towards this trend line. And then we kind of broken through, and okay, we're nowhere near it. In matter of fact, we kind of need to get to that 100K level, but that is for me the $1,000, $64,000 question. Whatever that quiz show was back from the 80s, because, well, we looked at this last week. Depending on which side you think we are, if we're still got that bull run up, or if we're in this complacency area and we're just waiting for that sort of rebound that's going to fail and come back down. We'll come back to this chart in a bit. This to me is kind of a crunch point, because thinking about some of those levels we talked about earlier on, obviously get through that 93, but we talk about this 100K, 50-weekly EMA kind of level, a strong bounce from 80K to 50K to 100K, sorry, 25% move up to here. If we then don't break through that and we roll over, I think we honestly think we have to start thinking about serious questions there. But it ties in that 100K on so many other levels. There's a horizontal trend line we can draw in a moment, but this major trend line here on bull market kind of trend line, we've broken through it. A retest of that before we fail would be a logical way to kind of signal, an exit rally, if you will, get everybody hyped up that we're back towards that 100K. But ultimately, it was just to drive liquidity for the smarter people to take a sell at a higher level. So I would, if you don't have enough time to look at charts consistently, just have something like this on your chart. Let's get rid of these ones. Don't need that right now. I don't know what kind of package and trading view you have. I don't even know if the Black Friday sale's still on, but you can certainly have a look at it and just sort of like go, okay, well, on one of my charts, I'm just going to consistently have something like this. Try and tidy that up a little bit. It's on the weekly. I'm sure if we did it on the daily, we'd find a better connection there. But that 100K level, you can add, the 50 EMA, which is here. We're now getting a hell of a conflux here, aren't we? I mean, there's a lot there, right in that little spot. And so if we have the strength to actually get back to that and we cannot continue through it, I think there's a real serious point that we can have a look at there. Let's just try and get that. What's happening? There we go. Back. Now, some of you may not be logarithmic people. You might want to have a look at it on the linear. And I think the linear kind of paints a little bit of a better picture for you, if that's what you want to do. Now, I can't do it. I can't. I've got that line. That doesn't help anyone. Unless we really fall. So let's just keep that down here. We've then got, where else can we do it? This one, I mean, it's only 2 touch points. I don't think it's really anything to write home about, but depending on how long it takes, it will probably interact with this level here around about 60,000, maybe. Okay. But actually the one that I've sort of seen, I'm going to draw it like this and then I'll zoom in, is this one. Now, I don't know where you want to draw it, but that's pretty good. Let's get rid of these two for now. Fairly easy for you to redraw those back on. And actually, again, same bars, same candles, just displayed differently. We've got coming back. I mean, it didn't make it this one time, I accept, but it's pretty close. And if we accepted that for the last logarithmic, that was its intention to get back there, just couldn't quite. Fair enough. But this one, all of a sudden, it's actually painting a fairly decent picture. We've been here before, and back in August, September of 24, that's a pretty fearful time down there. People's 9 months of going sideways and down. People getting pretty threaders with what they were experiencing. And okay, it's a much steeper drop off here, but we've hit it. We've had a fairly decent bounce, strong bounce from it, and maybe we can now actually talk about making that move back up. And suddenly there's yes, okay, the 50 EMA doesn't disappear, the 100K psychological barrier doesn't disappear, and some of the horizontal support doesn't disappear, but the long-term trend line is no longer resistance. It's actually acting as support in which we have kicked off it. And so, okay, maybe there's a positive case to be had there. And there's no right and, well, there is a right and wrong, only in hindsight. The best thing that we can do is try and have a look at it. Now, I don't ever really use the linear chart, so I was just doing this for more of the people that do. But hell, if I need a bit of hopium, maybe this is the right one to look at for now. But all we can really do is kind of present what the charts are showing us as of right now, try not to be too emotionally attached to where we find ourselves within it, and then try and come up with scenarios from that. And it's just giving you a best opportunity of, right, I don't really know where price is going in the future, but if I see that the price does get back to that 100K, tick, brilliant, we've had a relief rally, but it then fails, okay, and it starts to fall away, at least I then know what I'm going to do. If it gets to that 100K and breaks through it, fine. I've not actually said we've got to react as soon as we hit 100K. And I think that's just kind of where we got to go. And as I said, I am in a bit of a defensive mode at the moment. And I'm unashamedly in that defensive mode because ultimately, on the weekly time frame, we are below the 50 EMA. And until that goes back up, then I just want to be defensive. And I will treat rallies as opportunities to sidestep until I'm shown otherwise. And as with BitTensor yesterday, I didn't get out as soon as the rally happened. I got out after it started to fail. And I think that's where we just need to be sort of looking in our mindset. Okay. I'll just see if there's anyone's put anything. Hello to everyone. I've sidestepped videos. I think I might towel with a bit of this too. Just waiting for the contact to let us know what he thinks. Well, I'm out, and I've kind of gone that way. Bijan's put others D has been a downtrend for 5 years. I mean, you know, we've talked about it a lot. And I started this. I'm not trying to hide from the past. I started this cycle with complete confidence in where altcoins were going to go. And you know, March 24, everything was looking fantastic. Since then, nothing really. One last push to 105k. I think we will get that push, whether it's the last one. You know, we're certainly going to tell, but just in terms of really trying to get that frenzy of excitement back. I mean, you saw kind of the excitement from the bounce from 80k, and it is great to see it. Absolutely, of course it is. But you know, we soon forget. I think we are very quick as humans psychologically to forget our misery, to you know, just move on from difficult times. So we kind of forgot that we've dropped from 126 to 80k, and we just celebrated the 80k to 90k. And so that move up would just fit perfectly with our psychology of just let's get everyone excited again, and then we can roll it over. And you know, hey, I'll get excited. If we get back above 100k, I'm going to be excited. We're going to be above the 50 EMA. The energy levels are going to be higher. I'm sure the thumbnails are going to look a lot better. And of course, yeah, I'll be. I'm human too. I'm going to feel that emotion, but it's what happens when we do, if we do get there, and if we start to roll down from it, then yeah, I think we're going to have to look at that again. If it breaches your trend line, just move the trend line lower. I can use you. That is a good short-term fix, and that is the key to TAing. Is if it breaches your one theory, just make up another one. Anyway, let's have a look at the usual chart that I do. And actually, I'll just go back one, just very quickly, because it's maybe not as clear as so many other lines on it. So if we just put this on the daily time frame, and just remember, I did draw it on Tuesday, but just to draw it again, just so you can see it on a clean chart. It is on the other chart we're going to look at in a moment, but there's a lot of other lines on there. There's this sort of trend line here that we're kind of looking at, and we're sort of, you know, downtrend again. And as nice as the bottoming pattern is that we're currently forming, ultimately, yes, we've got horizontal levels, we've got EMAs, but we've got this trend line to break, this downtrend to break. And if we were to do it today, it's 96,000. So there is a level before 100k. Obviously, as that, it only takes, you know, next week, this time next week, and it's just at 93,000. So it's dropping pretty fast, but we've got to get through that. Okay. Otherwise, we're just still remaining in that downtrend. So that's that chart there, and that's this green line here. It's not as easily seen, but I use yellow on other things, so it's there. Do you think there may be other factors affecting Tau price rather than just TA? I'll come on to that one when I start talking about Tau. That's okay. So let's just get through bid sense. There's a lot more to see here, and daily time frame at the moment. Where do we currently find ourselves? So this 99 level, 100,000, wherever you want to put it, just put it back to where it was. We are below that. We're below a 50 EMA. You can't see because there's green lines in the way. That was the trend line that I'd drawn. We're below the 200. However, just looking at some of the other EMAs, the fall from grace, 126,000 down to the 800 EMA, a monster level on the daily time frame, especially for Bitcoin, because we've had plenty of 800 days in its 15, 16 year lifespan. It's been able to bounce. I mean, this is what, 2 and a bit year EMA there. Bounce from that, kind of get above the 10, and then just having this little dance with the 10 and the 20 at the moment. The 10 and the 20 are pretty much compounding on each other. We kind of find ourselves just about on top of both of those, awaiting, as I say, that next move up daily time frame for the 50 EMA. We have left a few vectors behind us. They're blue, they're not as strong. We've already recovered one of them back. And if we did have to recover that other one, that is that 86,400. It's that level I was talking about at the beginning. We've got to stay above 86,000. But for me, I think there's this move is, whether it's going to be sustainable or not, but this is, I would say, the move. We've got a vector there. We've got the 50 EMA, which, you know, to just sort of bring that enthusiasm up, reject off that, come back down, plus the psychological level, the 100k as well. I think that is the logical path. Now, Whether it is that, and that, I don't know. But generally, I do see us getting back to this level at some stage. Whether we can hold it, I cannot foretell. But yeah, that's sort of where I'm seeing. In terms of everything else from this, I mean, the 10 and the 20 have beaten us for the last month and a half. But actually, this recent price action over the last 2 weeks, we have been able to turn that tide. Normally, it's been a fairly swift rejection from the 10 EMA. We were able to break through it, rejected by the 20, come back down. We thought it was over, but actually whipsawed it back over the last couple of days. And we're now starting to have that battle where we're staying above those. And that's why I'm thinking that actually we've been able to break through those with volume. Not as much green. We would have preferred a green vector candle, but with volume. We're having a little bit of a reset here and then making that move through. And I won't bother going back over W formations, double bottoms and all of that kind of stuff. But it's the same thing. Everything's just looking right. And you can kind of see that pull back to the neckline was just recovering this vector candle, taking a breather on the 10 EMA and hopefully ready for the next move up there. Down onto the 4. This might be even harder to look at now. But with that, and again, you know, let's get rid of this green line. It's just too hard to look at. Let's get rid of this white line. You know there's a 100K level we've got to look at some stage. So that downtrend, again, the 50 this time is the one that's been beating us down. But actually, W formation, we took, this is not new. This was Tuesday. We spoke about it Tuesday night. We broke through it with the vector. We've come back up and we've managed to stay above it. Now, this is very similar, unfortunately, to how we got excited at the back end of last week, because we've done that same thing here that we're doing right now. But until we lose that 50 EMA, I'm more than happy for it, because you know, we want a W formation. So we've had that. To do that, we had to break through the 50 the first time, lose it to worry everyone, and then break through it very quickly again, which we've gone and done. So I don't have any problem with that. And then, you know, there's plenty of vectors here, again, for us to target through. The only issue being this 200 EMA. It is lurking. And at the moment, it's lurking at around about 95,000, top of that liquidity block, right at the liquidation zone, right back from the beginning of the chart there. So there's a little bit in our way, but I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged on lower time frames that we've managed to sort of find a bottom and we're building from that one. I cannot guarantee that it's sustained, obviously, and make that move. But if we're not going to have the perfect scenario of a V-shaped reversal, which is fine, you can't see that because no, you can. Then I'll take, you know, a bottoming pattern here. Then I've drawn it again, and then a slow build out. I'm all right with that. A healthy kind of up and down, you know, stairs up. As long as we don't take the elevator back down afterwards, then I'm all right with all of that. That's certainly fine there. So I don't have too much of a problem from what I'm seeing. Okay, let's have a look at BitTensor and try and tackle John's question as well. So is BitTensor's price being affected by anything other than TA? Possibly. So I don't really follow the ecosystem as much as a lot of you guys do. So, you know, I'll have to defer my understanding of that. You know, on the call yesterday, someone mentioned that at the beginning of every month, people need to pay the miners, and that's why you see these drops in price of Bitcoin in and around BitTensor in and around the first of the month. So they're leading into selling it to pay people, or they pay them in BitTensor and then the miners sell it or what have you. So there's obviously, but that's going to be a continuous pressure. There's no real way around that. I think the biggest thing is, you know, we underestimate the power of profit taking from that move. You know, people just assume institutions buy here and sell there, and they're like, right, we're done. Brilliant. What a fantastic move. But the reality of it is, you know, they're selling all the way through this move up. Okay. So there's some times where they don't make as big a move because they're selling straight away. And then here, you know, they're buying all the way down and they're just filling their positions again, however far. So if we get that next move up, you know, they've got to kind of work these out to make sure that whatever they bought up here at the high is somehow offset by when they go to look and sell and make some profit from whatever they finally put down at the lows. It's a balancing act, but it's not one buy and one sell. It's a laddering as they go through. And so, this fall from grace is just driving the price down for them to be able to fill their positions whilst fear from retail, takes over. In terms of these last two trading pubs have been an education for me and learning about what certain players in the ecosystem are doing. As I understand it, they're doing that in the native subnet token. So whether or not that's affecting BitTensor's price, I'm not sure. I don't think it has enough spotlight on it at the moment outside of the community to really upset the market, but it is worrying. Absolutely. I listen to what's been said, and you got the founder, Const, whatever his real name is, seemingly being helpful on one hand, and then it's sort of like benevolent and malicious at the same time. You never know which hand you're going to get hit with. If I was a subnet owner, you almost feel like you're walking on eggshells, because you appreciate this person is out to help you. But if you happen to word anything in the wrong way, or you have a different view whatsoever, you know that you can get absolutely smited. Old Testament God. So difficult position to be in. I think that is quite worrying, but how that affects the main BitTensor price, I'm not necessarily too sure. For me, I think it's just more, we have been in a long-term downtrend, barring a few weeks here. Alt seasons in general haven't really picked up, and everything's kind of blowing. And I think there's an argument to be had from a TA point of view. Matter of fact, the only anomaly from the TA is this pump. It was a lovely pump to see. Not so lovely, I suppose, because we didn't really take advantage of it. We got swept up. But I think, otherwise we can have a look at it from this point of view. And so going into BitTensor's price, John, I don't know if that helped answer your question, but there are some similarities with Bitcoin, in the sense that we've had this fall down, we come back down to sort of key levels, but this is, and I'm not telling you anything new, nothing new from Tuesday. The big difference, we had a side-by-side last time, remember, is this double bottom looks completely different. We've got a lower low as the right-hand side here. Then, for me, and I've left this done, I posted this chart in Discord yesterday when I got out, but this is the worrying thing, okay? It's fine to have that double bottom. We reject off this 10 EMA, fine, okay? We've been rejected off the 10 EMA the whole time. We come back down, we form that second bottom, we come back up. And then what I didn't like, I was quite excited when we got through 300. I talked about that 290, 300 level in Discord as being a key level. But as soon as we got to this 800 EMA, and it is difficult to see, it was the one that used to ride this line perfectly, but it is slightly higher, it's at like 220. So we didn't quite hit it. But for me, close enough. I'm sure we got another exchange and it'd be pretty damn close. It was I'm rejected off that Gandalf line. I just thought, right, I'm getting out. And I did get out quite early because I was looking at the chart. But when we now look at it with a bit of hindsight, I think it looks horrible. Horrible is probably a strong word there, actually. But we're still in the downtrend. We're still making lower lows. We're still making lower highs. We're rejecting off 20 EMA. We've rejected off the Gandalf line. We rejected off the 800 EMA. And we're then starting to move back down. I mean, I don't know what it's going to take. I mean, maybe actually what this is going to turn out to be is an inverted head and shoulders. I mean, yes, we will go down a little bit further, but as long as we don't breach 264, then this could actually look quite bullish and we make that move up. So that's fine, and that's something to consider. But right now, just with how BitTensor's been going historically, I don't really see that. I mean, daily candles here is very rare that we see vector candles, any sort of, increased volume. It's just normal volume, and it just seems to be falling back down. And so I do kind of think we will go back. We will look to retest these lows here, 254 maybe even lower. Starting to look at this wick, and this wick here is an anomaly because it went to 240 here, but we know on some charts it went down to 160, which I can't quite get to there. So that's kind of misleading, that wick, just on my chart. So I am just out. I'm waiting to see where it goes. I don't know where. I think for me, a reversal and a get back in is above this 304, which is kind of pretty much going to be break even. Because by the time I actually get confirmation that we are staying above it, it's going to be much closer to 310. But right now, I don't really see that. I see what has happened over the last 6 weeks as just a continuation. And I you know, I welcome anybody who thinks differently on that. If anyone wants to say no, that they see something else, then I'm happy to have a look at it. If someone wants to throw it, just trying to get rid of it, try and make it a bit cleaner. Even if you take off a lot of the others and we just keep the 10 and the 20 EMA on, I still think that that's what we're looking at. And again, if we have a look at some other levels that we say, well, we've kind of lost. There's this one here, which is at 290. That's why I was saying 290 was such an important level in getting above it. Because, we've got the base down here, we've got this wicks, we've got also back in June. And then it's not quite the waistline here, but we've certainly got some action back in March. So it's got plenty of history at that level. And we are now below it, being pushed down by the 10 EMA. And the 20 rarely gets touched. It's the 10 that's pushing us. And it's happily to just keep knocking us down a little bit. So when you strip it back to a kind of a raw chart like that, I appreciate it's not raw because there's a few indicators on it. I don't really see anything that's suggesting to me, yeah, we got this. So I'm honest view on it is that's where I am. And, I got out only a week ago to get back in on this pump here at like 274, 272, whatever it was, because I still saw that weakness. And that's kind of where I am with it. And I'm not as emotionally tied to it as others. I'm just looking at this, not as I couldn't care about the tech, don't really care about the ecosystem. I'm glad there is an ecosystem. I just want to try and back something that I think could do well, and there's opportunities to be made from this. 4-hour time frame. Sorry if that was a bit of a downer there. The picture to me still looks the same. I put this one back on. It's not quite a 315, it's a 316, but you get the point of what you're seeing there. Nothing in that picture there has really changed my mind. And then when you add to it, we've got a vector that we know vectors like to get recovered, and it's right on our doorstep. It's right there to be taken right now. And the next vector north is not till 370. So if anything, let's not start talking about the vectors below it, but we can't ignore those. But this one, if we were to say which vector we're going to next, you'd have to say the likelihood of us turning around, getting through the 50, the 200, the 800 EMA, and the Gandalf line, and everything else on the 4-hour time frame to get us to 370 would take that kind of level of movement, shock movement, which we would all greatly appreciate. I wouldn't unless I get back in. But on the balance of probability, that one feels like where we're going to go to. We can try and look at it in other ways and try and see if there's anything else to look at it. But that's where I see it. And now that we're on that 4-hour time frame, from being perfectly honest, I don't even like the thought that there might be an inverted head and shoulders forming, because there might be, but this shoulder is pretty much on top of the head. I'd prefer to see it to go out, and nothing formed in an ideal world. I get it, but I'd like to see it range a little bit more. Just try and be able to confirm that it is separation and it's not just a wider kind of move here, which you could argue would still be a double bottom. Sorry, but that's kind of where I see that. I've not done any trading for a couple of days. Kind of regretting, because last night I was up for this. I was awake when it got to 400 and it hit that, but I was too busy in my Cowboys misery to really look at the chime. But maybe there's a potential opportunity for a trade there. Most of I'm not buying this, I'm just perp trading it. This is looking like quite a steep angle there. Rejection from that 50 EMA, which we haven't been to for a while. I will keep an eye on this. If we lose this kind of level, that's the problem though. We lose that level, we could easily we could lose this level at sort of like 375 and just come down to 368, where the 50, the 20, so the 20 and the 10 EMA are. So that's a difficult one to really play, but a rejection from that was probably a nice move to make. But the argument could actually be that we're just rejecting from it and we're just snaking back up this one. So I'm holding off any trades today. I'm tired. I've obviously got this. So maybe I just sort of leave it and we just wait to see what comes from that one. But it's certainly something to have a look at. I don't know why I got SPX. It's because I used to hold it, but I don't now. If you have a look at ETH, just quick, how long are we going for? Oh, Jesus, 40 minutes. Okay. So I would put ETH in a very similar position to Bitcoin, and likely in a slightly better position than BitTensor, solely because of just how it's structured. Yes, okay, we lost the 800 EMA on the daily time frame, which is not what Bitcoin did, but we have managed to recover it and climb above the 10 and the 20 EMA, and in that process create a double bottom with the right hand side higher than the left. So we're starting to make those higher highs. We're kind of looking, you know, broken through that waistline, and we've not come back down to correct as much. But even if we did, it's going to be confluencing on the 10, the 20 EMA. You give it a fair chance that we'd make it above that. 3,300, let's just call it, for the 50 EMA, and, you know, 3,500, I suppose, for the 200. It's going to be some big areas to get through. But, you know, from a horizontal price action point of view, it's not a trend line, horizontal line. I mean, what really is there? Maybe that. Didn't quite hit that wick, but if I move it up, it's not going to take in the bodies. So there's maybe something around about that, you know, 385, kind of splitting the 50 and the 200 EMA. If we just get rid of this and this for a second, just to try and clear things up. Let's take it from there. So draw a fib from the October 7th high, which is the all-time high of Bitcoin. Not quite Ethereum, but it's come back down. Fairly decent respect at this level, in and around. We've obviously made that base, retested it, and we're just sort of breaching above the 3,100 level, which ties into the 236. And then we start talking about 382 and 500. That's about 3.4, which we talked about, and well, just above 3.5, nearly 3.6 there. So certainly some levels that we can look to attack. But that, I think, with where that fib level is, it's going to get messy, guys. So, you know, put your glasses on. Change that color. Change that one to color purple. So we've got this purple line, which I drew before off that base. If you remember, it ties in with this 382 line here. We throw on the 50 EMA now as well. Bang. So I tell you, that actually is a fairly decent magnet, if nothing else. Could be a good rejection point, unfortunately, but, you know, we hold 3,100. 3,400, I think, is certainly on the cards. Just with what is there in its way. There's no vectors to sort of stop us either. And there's hardly any vectors below us. I think we're kind of traveling in free airspace for Ethereum. Sorry. Spit my words out there. Anyway, so that's kind of where I see that. Won't bother with link there. Have a look at Sol just briefly. I did this, if you remember, I went down all the ones that I had, and they were all looking fairly similar. And this one's looking just as sad, really. It's not quite, I mean, it's almost a on par double bottom, but technically it isn't. We did form that lower low. Rejected at the 800 EMA. We're coming back down. We've lost 10 and the 20. Okay, link's a little bit better. Had some vectors in it, so okay. I'm not in those now, so I'm not really following them. Someone sent me this. Put it on. I think it was Bijan posted it, actually. So it should really be on a clean chart. It's not ideal, this, but ETH BTC has sort of just dipped its head above this downtrend. So, you know, maybe we've got that sort of space to run, and, you know, good indicator that we might get a bit of an alt season. For me, though, I mean, it's not far away, but let's just call it, you know, 0.035. We've got to get into this noise. We've got to get into here, you know, into that air. Then we can have that conversation. But we are technically above it, so something to look out for if that sort of floats your boat. Anything else really? Total market cap? I mean, it just looks like Bitcoins, because it mainly is Bitcoin. You know, I mean, we could draw pretty much all the same indicators. Actually, okay, interesting. One thing on total market cap is we hit this line and we rejected from it. That is interesting, because that's, you remember, from the Bitcoin line, not that one, this one, We haven't quite got to it yet, but when you look at it from a total market cap point of view, we have got from it. Let me just get some on the log chart. So that is interesting to see. And we've had that rejection from it. We're still in that uptrend, so there's still room to go. And you know, as long as we stay above 290 or 2.9 trillion, we can afford. It's going to hurt that fall, of course it is, but we can afford to say, well, we're still making that momentum. But we've hit that line, we've rejected from it. Is this a precursor to what Bitcoin's going to do? I'm not necessarily too sure there. In terms of everything else, I'll put it on a clean chart just so it's a bit easier to see. Dixie, one more here, weekly. Rejection from the 100. Let's see, we got interest rates next week. Pretty much certainty that they are 25% basis cut. I know it's not charting, but we'll just double check it whilst we're here. Sorry, guys, this has been a bit longer than I thought. Apologies. At 87%, fairly certain that's going that way. Now, on its way back to all-time high, we are tantalizingly close. You know, a couple of fraction of a percent, and we're going to be back at all-time high. And the S&P 500. I mean, if it closes this week on this will be its weekly close. Bear in mind, today is the close. This will be a weekly all-time high, which is just wild. And on the daily, I mean, we're 14 points away from a close. So, you know, when market's open, we could see a new all-time high for the S&P. And to go back to what I said about on Tuesday, the disparity between other risk-on assets at the moment, you can unfortunately interpret it two ways: as why has Bitcoin not got the attraction that the S&P and the Nasdaq and everything else does? Yes, they've seen dips, but they've been able to recover them. What's going on? Or is there a case of actually something outside of you know, normal day-to-day activity is suppressing Bitcoin for a reason? And what we're going to actually see is the gap between them. You know, can I overlay Bitcoin in time? Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it. What was I putting out as Bitcoin's market cap? But the point I'm trying to make, I suppose, is we've had that dip, but the S&P has bounced. Bitcoin's just moved sideways. And can we now get that move up to kind of bring these two closer together? It's a very rough chart. You can kind of do it. Maybe I'll set it up for Tuesday where you can have like the percentage difference in gains from tops to bottoms, and you can kind of see just how far away we really are. But there is a gap, a jaw between them. And is that an opportunity for that jaw to snap shut? That's one way of looking at it, absolutely. So something to that. But the rest of the risk on world seems to be doing all right. It's just crypto that is struggling for whatever reason. Didn't want to do that. Having a look at some of the others. Gold, nice, keeps on making its move up. You know, almost here again. Interesting world events could change this. You know, obviously people flee to precious metals in times of uncertainty, whether it be war or financial, economic uncertainty. US is reducing their interest rates. You think, right, we're getting some certainty on where we're going. We've obviously paused QT. Looks like the money printers are going to be turning on pretty darn soon. Why is gold continuing to go up? There could be an argument because of what's going on in Japan. And so actually, maybe back end of this month is when we're going to see whether or not gold has another run. I mean, it's only going to have to wait, what, 2 weeks today to find out. So silver's just looking unstoppable. It's actually looking stronger right now than gold. Coinbase. I'm just having a look at some of these. Won't spend too much time on them. Fine. Circle making a bit of a recovery, but I mean, we're down at 64. We're at 87 at the moment, so actually a fairly decent recovery, and you know, kind of a nice bottom in here from when it opened. MSTR. Yeah, I mean, these are some pretty steep drops. I don't want to dwell too much on them. Nvidia's there. There's some discussions at the moment. The CEO of Nvidia, his name, forget at the moment. He just did a Joe Rogan podcast, very interesting. If you're into just trying to understand sort of where Nvidia's been and what it can do, I think it's worth listening to, especially if you happen to own a bit of Nvidia. Might get you a little bit excited. There's bills being passed about whether or not the US is going to allow access for China for some of these chips and all this sort of stuff. So potentially some bright future for Nvidia after just a bit of a pullback from, you know, crazy highs. But Palantir, yeah, I'm only looking through these because they're just part of my pension portfolio. Tauex, there's some days I see it go, it's up like 20% and then it's down 17 the next day. So we're kind of just ranging. We had that big move up beginning of July, I think, and then we've just been forming a bit of a bottoming pattern around about 6 cents at the moment. But yeah, nothing too exciting there. Um, okay, that's fine. Then QBTS. I mean, I bought it at this level here, so I've kind of just started to see it recovering a little bit. Anyway, that's kind of where that sits. I think that's probably going to be it, because we've been rattling on for nearly an hour, and I've taken up far too much of your time there. Just fear and greed's getting out of extreme fear, and I've done this mainly for Tuesday calls because this is it. This is our. I took the Wall Street fearing, psychology cheat sheet and just actually overlaid it on the 2017 Bitcoin price cycle because the price is irrelevant. Okay, don't worry about what it says price. It's the sentiment that goes with each of these moves, so we can kind of have a look at it. And the question really is: are we still in the rocket ship, and are we on this side, and whereabouts are we, or have we peaked and we're down on this side? So we'll kind of just use this over the next couple of weeks, months, maybe, just try and get a feel for where we are because it doesn't matter. Like we don't know where we are, but it's how we act on either side of it. Whether or not we're greedy, we're still buying, or this side of it, are we going to let the fear get to us and we're going to sell, or we're going to try and just sort of play it? We can't help whichever side we're going to be. We'll just start looking at this a little bit more. I'll be honest with you. I really don't know. I don't know if we're here. I'll zoom in a little bit. I don't know if we're sort of in this pullback bit here before this final leg up. That's where I want us to be. That's where if we hadn't have lost the 50 EMA for such a long period of time, I'd be feeling a lot more confident saying that we were, or if we're here and we've had our initial drop and we're going to get back, everyone's going to think we're recovering and actually we're on the way back down. So I'm just trying to play what I see rather than what I hope. And right now we're just in that kind of quandary level at the moment where there's no clear evidence that tells me either way. I can hope that the 4-year cycle's been extended. I can hope that because of the government shutdown, everything's moved to the right. I can hope that QE is just around the corner. It's going to build us up. All those kind of things I can hope for, of course. But it doesn't necessarily mean we got there. So that's something that we will just explore on Tuesday calls, going forward until we get confirmation of where we are. And it's not a I'm right, you're wrong or anything else. It's just a look, if we can find out where we sit with some of these, we are going to be better positioned to make the right decisions for ourselves, for our own portfolios, for our own bloody, psychology, I suppose. Anyway, I'm rambling on now. What I will say, enjoy the rest of your week. Oh, I was going to talk about Discord. Sorry. Yeah, I will quickly. Just if anyone does catch this, I want to appreciate you have to wait 50 minutes to get to it. Maybe I'll just cut this little bit out and just stick in Discord at the end. I've seen a lot of stuff in the general chat at the moment. There's obviously some concerns about what people have been told to do or what can and can't be expressed. I appreciate your frustration within it. I'm not frustrated from it because I'm not involved, and if I was involved in it, then yeah, it can be quite difficult. I think what you just got to bear in mind is, how can I phrase this? One, Sam can no longer talk as freely as he would like, and I stress that, as he would like. I imagine that somewhere in some boardroom on the 57th floor of some skyscraper somewhere where they have their office in the imaginary world anyway, there's probably some legal department that is cursing Simon for having a community like us right now wanting to know stuff, because they're like, you can't talk about it every time, and he can't, and he has to now speak in innuendos and hindsight and everything else, and that is very difficult to interpret, particularly for those that are like trying to find the edge to recover because your psychology of where you currently sit within this market. But you've just all I would say, because I'm an enigma, I suppose, in that I do not support the detail route. I've been very clear on that. I've got my own plan. I'm doing my own thing, but I'm still in this group because I think Simon's a great guy. I think he has helped teach me some stuff and get through it. I love the community, and ultimately, I do think he will do well. And I've said this before. I think those that can adapt to what he's doing will also do well. But those that are just going to sit on their hands and wait to be spoon-fed information in a low liquidity environment are gonna get burnt. And I mean burnt. I mean scorched earth burnt, not just 30% down, a lot more. So, you've got to try and sort of adapt to what you're seeing right now, what you're experiencing right now. And I said this on Tuesday and I'll say it again, just have a long, hard word with yourself and say, in theory, I like the idea of following the Doc's wallet, but in reality, I do not have the time and the commitment to be able to be first. And in the words of Will Ferrell, if you're not first, you're last. And so if you don't, there's no shame in not in going, right, I can't do that because I have a job, I have kids, I'm not at my PC 23 out of 24 hours a day, then fine. You go, right, I've got to try and do something else. And I think that's what it's all about. And I appreciate you've come to RT for that alpha, but there are a lot of people in the group that have a lot of experience now because subnets have only been around for 10 months. So we've all experienced it. We've all got that experience. And there's some people in this group that have far greater experience than others. And so for me, I would be tapping into them. And, I'm sure people would be willing to have DM conversations with you, get on the phone and, just have a little chat and just try and understand how those that have moved away from just trading the Docs wallet and creating their own little PvP wallet, whatever, how they've gone about it and balanced it within there. Maybe it'll just give you a little bit of an edge. And what I then would say is if all of that fails and you still don't have the time to do it, you may not get the gains, but if you believe in BitTensor, owning BitTensor and just staking that, if that's going to be a long-term play, it's probably going to be a far safer play. It's a lot easier to tell the moves in terms of TA. A lot of more people are talking about it, etc. And you're not stuck with that level of liquidity. You may not get the face melting returns when the market absolutely rallies, but you've had to balance that with your risk to reward ratio whilst we're in the dogfight that we're in. So look, I'm not telling anyone not to share their views on in Discord. And I've tried not to write anything because I'm not in the trenches with you there. So I'm not really dealing with it because I don't know the ecosystem that well. I just think I'll probably wind people up more than anything else. But just for me, standing on the outside, trust me, I've done this in other systems. I've done exactly what you're going through and I've ballsed it up. So, it's hard to sort of listen to that advice until you've experienced it yourself. I get that. But for those of you that just think, well, Harry might know a little bit what he's talking about. I've been there. I've lost money doing the thing that you're trying to do as well. And I've adapted. And, I'd like to think you don't think that I'm down in the dumps, that I've not bothered getting into detail throughout this whole run. I've made my own opportunities and I've messed up as well. This cycle has not been perfect for me by a long shot, but I've been consistent in what I do. And that consistency over time has been able to get me to where I am. And it works with a perfect balance for me where I'm not a slave to the detailed charts. I'm not a slave to worrying about constantly looking on Twitter or other Discord groups to see if people are falling out with other things that I'm invested in. I can just take my time and do it at my own pace. And it works for me. And I promise you, you'll find something that works for you, but don't be wasting your time, your money and your effort and your hairline on something that isn't going to work. Have that honest conversation with yourself. That was a bit of a tough thing to end with, and I apologize for that. But I hope you take the advice or the comments that I made there with the sincerity that it's made. And I don't think things can change in terms of information that's going to be passed down. I think that's the reality of it. We just got to accept it for what it is. Anyway, I'll be around all weekend, chatting away, posting charts, whatever, letting people know where I'm currently at. Do try and enjoy your weekend. Hell, it's coming up to Christmas soon. We've got to put a smile on our face at some stage. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend. And I will see you all on Tuesday night for another call. Speak to you soon. Cheers now.